Hello everyone on the live stream and watching the video afterwards. Welcome to this launch of the Topologies second edition 2025, 5 years after the first edition was published in 2019. My name is Matthew Skelton, I'm one of the co-authors. My co-author Manuel Parish will join very shortly. And we're here to see what's new in the second edition compared to the first. We're also here to chat to some of the co-authors of some of the case studies in the book. We'll come to that a little bit later on in this session. Please add any comments or questions in the chat, and we'll try and pick up some of those comments and questions as we go through the session when they're relevant and so on. We're also going to collect together the comments and questions that we don't get really a chance to dive into. We'll collect all those together and we'll do something with them. We'll probably create an article or a series of articles or something like that, or use those to inspire some additional content or something afterwards. So please fire away with questions in the chat. You can add them in YouTube, LinkedIn, StreamYard, and they'll pop up here for us to use. But what I'd like to do is start with something around the mission that we've got at Topologies. Because when Manuel and I were writing the book, when we were thinking about writing it and when we were doing work together way back in from 2015 onwards, we actually had a shared kind of perspective, a shared drive. And that was that brought a lot of coherence and shared perspective to the original Topologies book. Now, I think it's fair to say we didn't actually explore that enough in the original book. One of the things we've done in the second edition is to make that the underlying drive and principles, if you like, more explicit. So we're at the point where we can talk about a mission for the Topologies. All of the Topologies activity. We do this. Here we go. We're on a mission to make work more humane and more effective for everyone via Topologies patterns and principles. This is what drives us. This is what's always driven us in reality. But we've made it more explicit now, effectively. So all the stuff we're doing, I'll share with you in a minute some of the additional things that we're doing. But all the things we're doing, all of the examples we're sharing, we're selecting these. We're doing work to make work more humane and more effective for everyone. We're not here to earn millions of dollars and buy a luxury yacht. Now, you could argue that's a perfectly valid thing to want to do. And some people have, in the past, gone and done that with some large certification frameworks and things like this. That's not how we choose to do it. We choose to focus on these things here around the mission. So that drives our partner program. It drives the other partners that we work with. It drives all the work that we do, all the content work we do, all of the case studies that we like to find, and so on and so on. Hi, Emmanuel. I was just talking to the
Sorry.
Hi. I was just saying that you don't want to buy a luxury yacht, and that you're more motivated by making things more humane.
What?
Is that correct? Is that actually correct? Have I got that wrong?
Of course not. Of course I want yacht and the desert island.
Yeah, because there is a route to getting that luxury yacht, but we've taken a different path, haven't we? And I'm proud we have. I think it's it's quite clear the number of people who have found Topologies really valuable. I think part of the reason they found it valuable is because it's quite clearly free of that kind of drive for like monetization and so on and so on. This is the weird thing. Actually, to some extent, it's actually quite hard to make money out of Topologies because of this core mission. But that's what's actually driving us, and so that's what we're up to. Nothing wrong with making a living out of it. Absolutely nothing wrong at all. But we're not here to to invent some kind of certification circus scheme or something else like that. And we're not about to sell the whole initiative to some big corporation. We're about to go not for profit. It's taken us a little while to pull that together, but we're about to get into a position where we're a not for profit operation. So take away that kind of dividend motive and really focus on this core mission here. Anything else you want to add before we shift on?
No, I think that's the main thing, that organizations to become more effective, more productive, if you like. But we found that it actually works together with making the organization more humane and the workplace more enjoyable at the end of the day, more sustainable.
And I think that's the point. For us, it's like the organization is more effective because it's more humane. It's not like a binary choice. There's some people think, oh, we've got to have an organization that's really brutal and really like mechanistic to work with, and the humane stuff is too fluffy. No. You get the effectiveness out of the organization when it's a humane organization to work in. Certainly, that's our perspective.
There's an interesting comment then. Just now.
Yeah, go for it.
From Jason, what will change with the organization shift to not-for-profit? We're not going to get into detail about that, but essentially the point is that the core operations from Team Topologies are helping promote this mission, and that means both generating new content, sharing good stories like the new case studies in the book and others that we've published on the website. It means supporting an ecosystem that is, let's say, aligned to the ideas of Team Topologies. From, if you like, from a funding perspective, it's connected to some of the things Matthew is going to present just now, because of course, even though it's not for profit, we have costs that we need to support, right? That we need to cover, basically.
So one of the sort of differences compared to some other organizations will be that we've got a very strong focus on partner enablement. So helping partners to succeed, helping end customers, end organizations to succeed. And a big chunk of that is kind of creating playbooks, content, this kind of thing that actually enables other people to succeed. So we'll be doing far more of that than you might expect for an organization that has a consulting arm. We have done some consulting over the last 5 years, but what we've done is to push all of the consulting now out to partners. Well, you see in a minute, Manuel and I will be doing a tiny bit of activity inside the organization, but the vast majority of stuff is then pushed outwards, and we're sort of seeing how much impact we can have with a very small core operation. Thanks for the comment, Jason. That's a really good question. So here are some of the things then that we're going to be doing as part of this mission. The thing that we're most excited about, really, or in the immediate future, is around leadership cohorts. So cohort learning or cohort sessions together with me and Manuel on a regular basis, typically a tiny cohort of like 8 people, maybe 9, 10, we're not sure yet, but a really small cohort. We'll have sessions for different time zones. So one for Asia Pacific, one for EMEA, kind of Europe, Middle East, Africa, one for Americas, possibly a separate one for Brazil in Portuguese language too. That's not me. That's Manuel, plus possibly one other person. I don't speak Portuguese language at all.
I failed at that.
But that's our next challenge. But basically, think back to the mission. Our mission is to help organizations become more humane and effective. What's important to enable that to happen? It's leaders who can lead with clarity, avoid common pitfalls, accelerate transformation initiatives, and use the case studies in the second edition that we'll share in a minute to help make their own organizations more effective. So we're really trying to have that outsized impact by working with small, tightly focused groups of people on a regular basis. So we're expecting to run something like one cohort per month, so over 4 weeks, on a regular basis throughout the year with different time zones and so on. So if you're interested in that as a leader, whatever kind of leader you are in your organization, get in touch via teamtopologies.com/cohorts. And you'll get all the details there as and when that stuff becomes available. So there's the URL, teamtopologies.com/cohorts. You'll find all the details on there, and just add your name to the mailing list, and we'll get in touch. The second thing that we're quite excited about is the Success Toolkit, Team Topologies Success Toolkit. It's a collection of tools from partner vendors, typically cloud or software as a service tools, that enable you to use to kind of spread the Team Topologies perspective and success across the organization at a bigger scale. So things like rapidly upskilling entire departments, planning and executing organizational change, assess and remediate problems with team cognitive load, adopting a flow-centric approach to risk and compliance, detecting and remediating poor boundaries, and identifying flow bottlenecks at scale. These are all the things that time and time again come up when we're speaking to leaders and managers and people in organizations saying, how do we do these things? Well, we've done the work to pull together this success toolkit with partners where the products are explicitly influenced by team topologies, or where the products align super well to the principles. We'll have a look at some of the toolkit tools in a second, but we've curated this set of tools effectively, and so you can use these individually or together to get the success at scale that you might be needing inside your organization. What else do we need to say about that, Manuel? Oops.
I think that's it.
I think that's it. A few different. We've got 4 partners at the moment. We're speaking to a couple more already, and we expect to have about 7 or 8 partners in the toolkit, 7 or 8 tools in the success toolkit by around about the early part of 2026, covering all these kind of dimensions. So Team Topologies Academy for large-scale, wide-scale upskilling and awareness. So self-paced video training. Manuel's been leading on that for the last, since the beginning, right? Since 2021 we launched.
21,
right?
yeah.
21, yep. We've had, I think, multiple thousands of people through that now, and providing a hugely valuable kind of foundation and backfilling and reorientation of perspectives to move things forward across the organization. The second tool in the list there, COSLI, helping to automate governance, accelerate delivery, and remain compliant. The principle behind that tool is to empower teams to deliver software safely and compliantly. Like, it's that sense of empowering the teams to look after that themselves without having to be stuck and wait around for a separate governance team to have some input. So we're very happy to have that tool in this toolbox, because what we've seen time and time again is organizations with a lot of heavy governance, you can make all the team changes you like, you can have all like the best kind of practices and this and that. If governance is still very, very slow and traditional, those changes are not going to deliver the business outcomes that we're expecting. So that's why that's in there as an example of like the best example we can find so far of a tool that works in that space. We've known the people behind COSLI for a very long time. I think I first met the CEO, Mike Long. I think I met him back in like 2014, probably, something like that, in the DevOps community way back when. Do you want to speak to Team Picture and Team Form? Well, Manuel's disappeared. Give me a second. I will speak to them instead. Manuel's coming back. I think he's having some problems with connectivity. I'll speak to Teamform just in a second while Manuel's coming back online. We've worked with Teamform for a number of years. They provide a real-time organizational-wide view of teams across the organization using data from multiple different sources. And they've done some really nice work in like introducing and kind of representing the team topologies patterns using some of the diagramming styles that we invented. But then they're backing that with data and connecting it through to like real metadata and stuff inside the organization. So we love what they do, like explicitly influenced by and shaped by team topologies is what you can find in some aspects of their product. So it's great to have them on board. And then the fourth one on the list here is temperature, which you've been also running manual, haven't you?
Yes. So temperature is trying to provide answers to common question, which is, okay, we understand the concept of team cognitive load, but how do we measure and assess team cognitive load, and so that we can make better decisions about addressing some of the issues around that. So we actually, in the first edition of the book, we introduced the concept, um, but as something that we should be considering as a kind of way to understand what should be the responsibility of teams and boundaries and all that. But in the last years, we actually took on this path of going more in depth into what actually influences team cognitive load. So we partnered with Dr. Laura Weiss. She has a PhD in psychology and organizational psychology, and she was able to bring all the existing science and knowledge around cognitive load into a model that basically, by answering a survey, we get by all the team members, we get a good view of what is actually driving cognitive load in that team. Um, and so it's a systematic way. So temperature is the product that allows us to systematically look at what's happening with the cognitive load of one particular team, but then also in an organization, we might be looking at multiple teams and identifying some patterns or anti-patterns, if you like, why are most of our teams are struggling with X. Maybe they're struggling with understanding their mission. Maybe that's something that we need to address more at the leadership level, that maybe there is a lack of clarity on why are the teams here, what is their mission, right? So there are about 25 different drivers of cognitive load that we've identified through this research and the model that we've implemented then in temperature. And it's free to use up to 25 teams, because the community aspect is always been very important to us. And there are some services associated, paid services, that if you want to go further and get some help. But I would love for people to try it out and give us feedback as well.
I put the link to the kind of scientific model behind temperature. I put that in the comments, so that'll appear
Yep.
in YouTube and StreamYard as well. Cool. The next thing, the third thing that we're offering now is bulk book purchases. In other words, if you want to buy a big box of second edition books, you can do, and we make it very easy, because it turns out behind the scenes, the whole book publishing industry is quite complicated, to say the least. We as authors got an insight into that, but the book shipping and distribution and printing industry is also very complicated. So basically, we quite often get requests for, hey, can we get 50 copies? Can we get 100 copies? Can we get 500 copies of the Team Topologies book? Because we're running a conference, or I want to give them to all of my direct reports or my managers in this department, or everyone in the organization, or whatever it is. And it's also useful for conferences. So a sponsor at a conference might then buy 30 copies, 50 copies, whatever, bring those to their conference stand, and then have those as a giveaway or as a prize or something like that for people attending their conference stand. So if that's your situation, you can go ahead and do that. Head to teamtopologies.com/book, and that's where you'll be able to fill in the order form to grab multiple copies. There's a minimum order of 50 copies, and we can fulfill that for you in a straightforward way. Okay, what's next? This is roughly what we'll cover today. We'll look at some outcomes from Team Topologies since 2019. We'll look at what's new in the second edition, and then we'll look at some case studies from, in this particular live stream, we'll look at the case studies from the Americas region, and we've got some of the co-authors from one of the case studies waiting in the studio here in StreamYard, so we can talk to in a little bit later on. Let's just switch to this one. So the original book, first edition, sold more than 200,000 copies. It's in 5 languages, right? English, German, Japanese, Chinese, Korean.
Korean. Yep.
I think it's the 5 languages. It's had a huge impact. I mean, I think it's fair to say we're part of the impact has been the practitioner and enthusiast community, really, people at all kind of levels of the organization who have seen the value in it, seen the kind of humanity, I guess, in it, but also the effectiveness, the connection through to systems thinking and socio-technical aspects and so on, and have really seen the language, the patterns, the ideas in there being essential effectively as a way of thinking about organizational effectiveness. So we're really grateful to everyone. If you've ever recommended the book or tried to spread the ideas, thank you very much. We're super grateful for that because it helps with that mission again, making organizations around the world more effective and humane. There's actually a slight shift in the subtitle between the first edition, this one, and the second edition. And that's this. In the second edition, we now realize that it's all about organizing business and technology for fast flow of value. The first edition, if I can make that work, talked about organizing business and technology teams for fast flow. But what we've realized is it's not just about teams. That's actually a miss. It's a slightly confusing, slight misrepresentation of what team topology is actually really about. What we've realized now is actually it's organizing business and technology more generally, the capabilities, not just about organizing teams, organizing business and technology as 2 kind of concepts, 2 sets of capabilities. And it's about fast flow of value. It's not about like getting loads of features out of the door or just doing more and more stuff. It's about helping us to focus on value. Literally, one of the key concepts in team topologies is a stream aligned team. It's a team aligned to a stream of value. We're connecting to the value stream concept. We're thinking about the value we're delivering. So that was an important but quite subtle but quite important shift, because we've actually seen that the remit of the team topologies ideas is way bigger than just teams. And that's a kind of an important point. There's a bunch of other stuff that we'll see in a minute. We've got 10 case studies. We've got kind of worldwide representation from those case studies, and there's a few other things, particularly around the concept of a grouping, and then some reflection from me and Manuel on the last sort of 5-6 years and what's coming next. Anything I've missed, Manuel, on that?
No, I think that's
right.
About it.
The penguin is here. Here's the penguin. Here's the little penguin down here in Antarctica. That's the only place where we don't have a case study from. We've got a case study from every other continent, which is great to see. Bit of a cluster around Europe, which is, I think, understandable given that Manuel and I both live in Europe. Over time, obviously, we're going to try and reach further afield and get case studies from a wider area. We've got a great case study coming soon, actually, from Australia. I can't say anything about it right yet, but it's absolutely superb. And we've got some more coming from, I think another one from Brazil coming soon, and some from other parts of the world on the way. So obviously, like if you think if you've got a great story to tell, and you'd like us to tell that story, and you've used team topologies quite explicitly, get in touch, and let's start that conversation. So you can get in contact with us at teamtopologies.com/contact. What's next? What's next is, let's have a quick look at the chat, see what people are saying in there. Congratulations on the second edition. Thank you, Malcolm. That's great. There's a question. Let's just show this question, but I think we probably won't answer it directly yet, because I think this needs a bit more time. But we might come back to it later. Any recommendations to get stakeholder buy-in, persuade aligned partners to engage in team topologies type practices like collaboration mode and things like this? It's a great question. I think what it speaks to is that some of the team topologies ideas effectively are quite new, alien to lots of people who were more familiar working in a more traditional way of working. So the person who made the comment extended the comment like to this one here, especially if those people are more project management, waterfall, hierarchical in their thinking. Now, that's a big shift, and there's change management, there's coaching, there's a bunch of things that need to go on. There's no special magic that sort of Team Topologies itself brings in that space. So it's something I think that we'll probably start to address over time with some additional content and things like this. Some of the case studies do tackle aspects of that, but it's a slow process and needs, it needs to bring empathy, because people are coming from a different background and believing that what they know is, if you like, the truth or the right way to do it. So we can't go in there and say all you know is all rubbish. You have to throw it all out. That's just not going to work. Clearly, there's an approach which needs to bring kind of empathy and work with those people and help them to see how they can redeploy their skills, refocus their existing skills into an approach which is very much focused on value flow. That's a simplistic version of the answer to that question. It's a great question. I love it. We'll take that as a question to work on over the next few months and into 2026. Quick word from our sponsor for this launch event. Our sponsor is Conflux, and with Conflux, you don't need to navigate transformation alone. You can achieve millions in annual savings, rapid ROI, and faster time to value. As it happens, Conflux is my consultancy. This is kind of an example of some of the sponsorship and partner activity that we're now doing in the Team Topologies world. Conflux, so my company there, was instrumental in catalyzing the transformation in 2 of the case studies that are in the second edition. Telenet, that's in the EMEA region, and EBSCO, and we'll talk about that in a little bit later in this session today. But Conflux, we provide assessments and expert sense checks, workshops and training, leadership right hand support, and we drive transformations too. So if you need any of those things or want to explore further, get in touch. You can scan the QR code or go to confluxhq.com. Now, as I mentioned, that's an example of a sponsorship opportunity that we have at Team Topologies now, particularly as we move to a not-for-profit approach, where we're looking to make sure we don't have big revenue streams from consulting or certification. So we're looking for other opportunities to help sustain this approach and therefore drive those good mission outcomes. Our audience is highly engaged. So we've got about 25,000 people worldwide. For those of you that know anything about newsletters, our open rate is about 45% consistently, which is unheard of in the industry at large. Basically, like that, normally open rates are like 5%, maybe less, and our click-through rate is something like 5 to 8%. Now that's also very high. It sounds low, but it's actually very high in the industry. So anyway, we've got a load of really switched on, really engaged people. They really want to make this stuff happen and work, using the Team Topologies and related ideas in their own contexts to help, again, like with that mission that we said, the humane and effective organizations. So if you'd like, if you want to explore sponsorship opportunities for events, for content, and for other things like this, then get in touch, teamtopologies.com/contact. Let's have a conversation. Right, let's look at some outcomes from adopting Team Topologies then since 2019. Do you want to take this one, or shall I speak to it? Manuel, don't mind.
I can. I mean, this is one of the things we've realized over the last few years, that in the book we were talking about ownership of streams. And we kind of shifted a bit to this idea of stewardship of long-lived services or streams. so that we achieve a flow of value that is not just rapid but also safe and sustainable. And that means that we are looking at the services or streams of value as long-lived things that we provide to our customers, that we effectively implicitly make a promise to our customers that we are offering something that is of value to them that will be around for a long time. And interestingly, in many organizations, obviously, partially historically, the division between people who build and the people who run or maintain something has been an issue where the mentality is that, well, once we've built the thing, just get someone to operate it or maintain it, right? And what we know is that, and if you look at most, large companies, they have effectively a subset of what they provide to their customers, products or services, is what really sustains the company and brings in the revenue. So a lot of times we see a lot of focus on the other 80% of what we're doing that is not necessarily what customers value and pay for. So effectively, and these days, as we're able to actually build faster with shorter time to market, if you like, we need to even more be looking at, okay, what actually is valuable to our customers, what actually is sustaining the business, making sure we have the right stewardship and care for those services or streams.
And it's quite a different. It ends up being quite a different perspective compared to what lots of people are used to, isn't it? Lots of people are used to doing a thing, getting it live, forgetting about it. The idea of then having to have this stewardship, this ongoing stewardship of something is a very different. It turns out it's a very different way of thinking. I think it's fair to say that you and I both sort of found it a very straightforward way of thinking about building and running services, but it turns out that lots of people in the industry find it a very new way of thinking. So I guess this is something we're going to start to emphasize more and more, is that different perspective, and help people to pivot towards that perspective. A bit like the question we had before, like how do you start persuading people to shift from a project mindset to something a bit more stewardship. Just a comment there about my microphone. It looks like I've just tried to increase the volume. Hopefully it's a little bit easier to hear now. Inside the Team Topologies book, if you're not familiar with it at all, if you're new to all this stuff, we've got different types of team. We've got different types of team interactions that we define, called team interaction modes. We've got some heuristics or clues, if you like, for finding boundaries. Because it turns out that finding good boundaries is like a really, really crucial aspect of getting to a point where we've got good flow. We've got this focus on long-lived stewardship, as we call it now. We've got architecture for value flow. It turns out that the architecture of organization and systems and work looks very different when we're thinking about rapid flow value compared to when we're thinking about things more traditionally. And then some patterns for evolving the organization, which again, I think until the Team Topologies book came out, there wasn't really much focus on evolving organizations over time. And that's a key aspect of the Team Topologies thing, where we assume that the technology will change regularly, rapidly, and we assume that the regulation will change regularly and rapidly, and so on and so on. This is an approach which is designed to be adaptive, which expects things not to be static, which expects us to have to change the technology we're using, to change some of the approaches we're using on a fairly regular basis. What else? All right, some outcomes we've seen. You want to speak to these, or shall I do it? Don't mind.
Sure. I mean, These are obviously not guaranteed, but we've seen from cases and also talking to different organizations and helping different organizations that we've seen several cases where they were able to achieve revenue growth between 20 to 30%, up to 50% faster delivery with fewer incidents. And the last one, which to me personally, and I believe for Matthew as well, is really what makes the work more humane, is to see that team happiness tends to increase when adopting these ideas and understanding the principles behind team topologies, which I think is natural because they're effectively helping teams and individuals feel like they're more self-sufficient, that they are have a clear purpose in the organization, and also that they can improve their mastery. And so these are some of the intrinsic motivators that basically increase happiness at work. So that was in a way kind of in the background when we wrote the first edition of the book, um, but it's really rewarding to see this actually playing out in the cases and in the organizations that adopt these ideas and principles.
We'll have a tiny look at four. I think we've got four examples here. Have a very quick look at these, and then we'll. I think then we dive into the cases themselves, right? I think that's coming next.
Yes, we'll talk a little bit about the new forward and afterward.
Yep.
So Adidas, for example, they've been on this really impressive transformation journey for quite a long time. One of the let's say the pillars of their transformation from essentially outsourced project based organization 15 years ago to today being one of the most, I would say, forward thinking digital product company, in terms of obviously their an important part of their sales model. And one of the pillars is their platform group, so their internal platform engineering group, which has adopted very much the ideas that we talk about in team topologies, about the platform as an internal product, a platform focus on reducing cognitive load of the product teams using it, and so on. And so some of the their data services in that digital platform um, allow them to save €500,000 per year. So that's one service or one small set of services out of many. They also help free up capacity in the product teams or streamline teams to actually focus on the customer and focus on the business value of what they're building, rather than focusing on the tooling and how we build the thing, but actually what are we building and is this helping the business and the customers.
There's a case study from EBSCO. We'll actually speak to the two of the three co-authors in a few moments. Well, about 10 minutes probably. But they saw some significant benefits, ROI, from adopting some of the team topologies principles and ideas in their teams and systems. They ended up with a 26% decrease in cycle time, so basically value delivered more quickly, and an ongoing, like, annual $9.1 million reduction in cost. That they reduced that, and that's an ongoing reduction. That's every year. Anyway, but we'll dive into more detail about that a little bit very shortly, basically.
We have KFC as well. In this case, and is particularly in the UK and Ireland region, but also by focusing on their actual value streams and reorganizing around those value streams and reducing a lot of the blockers and dependencies, they were able to reduce cycle time as well by 1/3. And also from a business standpoint, achieve one of their main goals, which was to increase the digital sales participation in the overall sales of KFC, and so that increased from 20% to 65%. This was, of course, influenced as well by the pandemic, but it involved reorganizing their digital area into really thinking what are the streams that we want to deliver value on to our customers. So really interesting case study as well. And finally, yes, it is a kind of the company built this what they call a super app. They're focused on the North African market and also expanding to Middle East and I believe other parts of the world as well. So kind of a startup growing into a scale up. You can see the growth in terms of the adoption of their product from 3 million to 8 million users in a sort of relatively short time frame. And one of the key things that is interesting about this case is how they took a kind of agile approach to how they did the organizational changes over time as they were growing. Also, I believe by almost 10x in 2-3 years, the growth of the technical area. And so being able to do that and at the same time seeing an increase in the employee satisfaction of about 230% is really impressive, and again speaks to the fact that these ideas help people feel more motivated and satisfied with the work.
So what's new in the second edition? Let's have a look. We've added some reflections on the last 6 years, because we started writing the book in 2018, right? So it's 6 years since we actually started putting the material together. It takes 1 year to produce a book. It's not nimble and agile at all. It's very waterfall. We've been particularly more explicit about what are the team topologies principles, like we've said, like around making work more humane and effective, and so on and so on. We try to bring those to the surface to make it easier, to be honest, at one level for organizations like leaders and execs to go, ooh, we really want this team topologies approach because it fits really well with our core values, or, oh no, we don't really like that stuff about being humane and effective. We just want to get stuff out the door more quickly. Well, if you just want to get stuff out the door more quickly, team topologies may or may not be the right fit for you. And certainly if you're not interested in making things more humane, then it might seem less of a good fit. But for those organizations that really want that, then team topologies is going to be a great fit. So we're trying to bring that to the surface, basically.
There's also some aspects that we talk about in the forward around different scales, like how do this, especially the enabling and platform patterns, how do they sort of manifest at different scales, from startup where you might just be having some practices that are aligned with those ideas. You don't actually have dedicated teams, all the way to large scale organizations where you actually need multiple enabling teams, and maybe you need a kind of structural enabling department or group of teams when you're trying to build some kind of organizational capability across the whole organization. So that's also something we touched on in this new forward.
And it's been great over the last 5 years to see how the team topologies ideas have been blended with or combined with other techniques that are coming from a similar perspective or similar set of underlying principles, particularly things like domain-driven design, DDD, Wardley mapping, things like this. And the combination of these techniques, either just a pair of techniques or sometimes it's all three or more, value stream mapping, for example, things like this. Like when you bring these techniques together, it becomes extra powerful. It feels like superpowers, effectively. And we'll be doing more of that in the coming years, particularly into 2026, like spotlighting more of these different like combinations and how you can use them and that kind of thing. There's a really important concept that we included in the second edition. This is around a grouping, and there's two different kind of aspects to this. The first is, in fact, there's a question in the chat here from Fabio who was stuck in a meeting, and have you covered the differences regarding the platform teams and so on and so on. So yes, this is the stuff we're about to cover now. So thanks for the question, Fabio. That's really useful. It's one of the most important things that we included, really. In the first edition of the book, we talked about 4 different team types: streamlined team, enabling team, complicated subsystem team, and platform team. Turns out we'd never really meant to call it a platform team. We've got evidence. We've got a Slack message in 2018 where we say, oh, we shouldn't call it a platform team because it's not the same thing. It's really a grouping. Unfortunately, we didn't make that change. And so platform team got into the first edition of the book. It's never really been a team. Only in the smallest organization would you see a single team be running a platform. Platform is really a grouping of other teams. And you can see that at the bottom right. Here you've got platform grouping, a kind of blue box around some other types of teams. And inside that box, you've got multiple different types of team. And you could zoom in further into that inner platform and see similar kind of groupings. So that's one of the biggest changes. Like, don't talk about platform teams, talk about a platform grouping, a grouping of teams, and there's multiple different types of team in there. Now, you might talk about a team that sits in a platform. That's fine. You're aware that it's got a particular kind of value consumer for the work of that kind of team. But it's really important, this idea that you've got effectively a grouping and multiple different types of teams inside that grouping. You can also then look at something that you might call a value stream grouping at the top right here, like the yellow kind of shaded area. We might decide it's not called a platform. It's just kind of a grouping of other teams, multiple different types of team. Again, like here, you might have a mini platform that sits within this value stream grouping. It's only serving teams inside that value stream grouping. But there's some it can be useful to group teams together in some areas like this. The thinking in this space is evolving. We are going to add some more patterns and recommendations as we get into 2026 and beyond. But there's an entire kind of section in the book, and we've corrected the terminology in the original part of the book where it talks. I think it's chapter 4 or 5, where it talks about originally talked about the platform team, and now we talk about groupings instead. A super important concept. It's a bit like Russian dolls. You can kind of keep zooming into different parts of the organization and see the same patterns. So what's coming further ahead in the afterword, we're really zooming into the importance of cognitive load as a design principle. The exact detail of cognitive load that we used in the first edition could be refined. So as Manuel talked about before with Temperature, the cognitive load assessment tool, we've been refining that approach in the last few years, and there'll no doubt be more refinement to do in the coming years. But fundamentally, cognitive load or mental load feels like a really important design principle for knowledge work. And without it, you just can't make sensible decisions. You can't make realistic decisions. With cognitive load as part of that mix, you can make realistic decisions. And of course, it's fully compatible with any changes brought about by generative AI. Generative AI is going to shift where cognitive load happens, but it's not going to get rid of it. I mean, there was an interesting research, I think, published by Harvard Business Review just recently, where they found that some AI tools were generating high cognitive load because other colleagues in the organization were having to review these and find the mistakes. So there's cognitive load is definitely going to be here as a design principle for us to use for the foreseeable future. We're looking at how Topologies is going to expand beyond the original remit, or the original focus, which was kind of technology. Both Manuel and I come from an IT type background, software background. Organizations are already using Topologies way outside of technology. They're using it for managing doctors' practices. They're using it for defining and running legal services inside a law firm, a whole bunch of things, R&D, research and development for global pharmaceutical companies, all of this kind of stuff. These ideas are being used there already, And so we're working towards formalizing some of that stuff, and the next book that we write will hopefully like tackle some of these larger scale applications of the fundamental ideas. And yeah, a little bit about this mindset shift towards a flourishing ecosystem like a garden instead of trying to create a machine. So moving away from the organization as a machine to how can we kind of allow things to emerge and be fruitful, if you like. All right, let's dive into the case studies. Not from APAC. That's not where we want to be. We did those earlier on. Let's have a look. So the Americas now. And the one we're going to zoom into is EBSCO. And this is all about delivery and operational effectiveness. You'll find the details at teamtopologies.com/EBSCO. Round about 2,500 employees. I've been using Scaled Agile framework for many years with some levels of success, but things are starting to slow down. And so they needed an approach which is going to go beyond that. And we got involved, I think 2020 or 2021, and did some kind of catalyst work early on to help kind of shape and reset thinking and give some options for how they could address these challenges that they had. And we're super, super, super grateful for Nicole and Stephen, who are both here in the studio. Here we go. Hi, both. Good to see you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey.
And Stephen and Nicole are two of the three authors of the EBSCO case study in the second edition book. Very instrumental in driving the changes and making it all happen. So it's great to have you here. Thanks you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe could just one of you give us a really quick whistle stop overview of EBSCO, or certainly the area that we're the information services area, as was back in 2021, 22, as we're doing this work. Just a quick whistle stop tour, like what kind of things does the organization do, who are your customers, what's the kind of scale, and then maybe what the challenges were as we started to do that early work.
Nicole, do you want to do that?
Sure. So we are EBSCO Information Services, which is a division of our larger EBSCO. So we were primarily focused on our engineering software development teams that were organized on ARTS because we had adopted SAFe, I want to say 7 or 8 years prior to engaging with you all. So EBSCO Information Services is a major global provider of online research databases, ebooks, e-journals. We have an integrated discovery. We have clinical support solutions, and we serve libraries, hospitals, corporations, researchers worldwide. So it's a pretty big operation. We had, at the time we were talking, or we impacted 50 to 70 teams that we were talking about reorganizing across about 7 different ARTs, and our ARTs comprised anywhere between 5 and 13 teams. So that's the larger scope of what we were doing and focused on delivering. Steve, did I miss anything?
Yeah, that was very good. Thank you.
I think at the time that the delivery was kind of slowing down. There's quite a lot of dependencies. It was kind of, there was not much sort of stewardship or sense of ownership around the work. It was difficult to get like a sense of buy-in and that kind of thing. I think those were some of the challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. That's essentially what prompted us to reach out. So again, we had been operating on some longer-lived ARTs or teams of teams, and over the years we had moved teams, but we had never stepped back and applied these concepts that we ultimately learned to better, again, our focus was how do we improve or focus on flow of work, right? How do we reduce the number of dependencies that we were at the time plagued with? And we actually had the data And so again, yeah, to your point, Matthew, that was exactly what drove us here.
I think EBSCO
That's
is
an interesting point.
I was just saying,
And let me
EBSCO is
just
a
ask,
30-plus-year-old company. So we had evolved. All companies evolve over time, and we'd evolved in some ways that had become inefficient. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt.
I think part of your success, so you realize you're inefficient, but I think part of your success was because you had the data, or you did the work to plug in the data capture to actually evidence that, right? Because then you could show before and after, because there's so many organizations that they don't have the telemetry, they don't have the data and the metrics and that kind of thing. They're not capturing that in the right way, whereas you actually put the effort in to go and capture that data so that then you could detect if these team topologies type changes, if these changes were actually having an effect, and it turned out they did. But I think that's a key point. Like what did you find any challenges in like setting up that kind of metrics capture, and which were the key metrics which really helped to show ROI from the changes here?
The answer, did we have trouble with the metrics? Yes, and Nicole actually was a huge catalyst in getting that right. But just selling this idea, we started with looking at inter-team blockers. So how many times was one team waiting on another team in order to get some vertically aligned work out the door? And that, I think, just doing the mock-ups of how we thought we could change the number of blockers that were being introduced in regular workflow was really what sold the idea to executive leadership. And then from there, we wanted to dive deeper and get the best metrics we could to continue to be able to, every PI, I think Nicole publishes a report on how we're doing on the metrics we decided on. We got some more metrics. Nicole, do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately we ended up honing in on feature cycle time blockers, right? Because your feature cycle time at the top takes into account the blockers that we were looking at and capturing. At the beginning, we didn't really have a solid standardized set of blockers, right? So it did force some best practice there, and what were the core set of data points from a blocker perspective that we wanted to capture. So we honed in there and we came up with a core set of blockers that included, like Steve had just mentioned, team dependencies, which again could have been inter teams of teams dependencies, or team dependency outside of their area on another art, or it could be a blocker based on could be operational or system, right? And they all do come into play based on how we ultimately showed progress and how we reorganized.
I'm curious about first of all, I agree that it's really awesome how you got the data to actually be able to reflect on, what is the actual situation. Like I understand that SAFE was helpful to move from where you were maybe 7 to 10 years ago to being in a better place, but then you realized there are other blockers and things that we need to address. But I was curious about how was the reaction when you were trying to bring about some of these changes and introducing some of the team topologies ideas, because I think that's a common question as well. How much resistance? How did you go about to actually talk to people and get them to understand why are we making these changes, right?
For me, and I had to do a lot of the analysis work, what I found was helpful was to take sort of a layered approach to how I interact with people. So we had these large meetings that had all the stakeholders involved. But as you said, as you say in your book, people can feel territorial. They just resist change because we're all human. And so after each of those meetings, we would schedule individual meetings with just small groups of stakeholders to give them a safe place where they weren't going to be contradicted by their peers and they could just tell us their true concerns. And then we would do that with everyone who would seem to have some concerns. And then at the next stakeholder meeting, we would be the people to sort of bring up those concerns so that there's not interest in fighting around them. Is that?
I really like that. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, fortunately, I mean, SAFE is a agile delivery framework, right? As with any agile implementation that we had embarked on years ago, was the catalyst for us to really engage and empower our teams. So we had done that upfront work years ago. So the transition was a little bit easier. We weren't going from a traditional waterfall approach, or I think somebody referred to it as a, your traditional PMP approach. So we had already worked tirelessly on our culture and the key agile principles that can come out that influence that culture. So, I mean, again, to Steve's point, it took an army, right? But it also took us also engaging and empowering our teams to be part of it, not just the leaders that were helping drive it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's two words there which are absolutely essential ingredients, right? You've done the work on the culture beforehand. You've got the people oriented roughly in the right way and thinking about things in the right way, and then you've taken the time to explicitly want to empower teams to kind of like look after outcomes, and that there's a huge gap in across multiple different organizations. Some organizations are so far away from that stuff. They might come to team topologies and go, wow, this looks great, can we just implement it? And we go, to be honest, you're miles away. You're a long way away from being able to use these ideas because the culture's not there, because the drive to empower teams isn't there. Whereas I think that it feels to me like that was one of the, having met you and quite a few people in your organization on the early workshops, it definitely feels to me, looking back, like that was a key part of the success that you were able to have, because the groundwork was there. Yeah,
I think you see that.
Steve,
I may.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I was going to say, we did see that in the satisfaction surveys that went out later. We saw teams saying that they preferred this. They felt better about having the more vertical ownership and more ability to create change. Go ahead.
If I may, a little anecdote, but Matthew knows that here and there we've received requests for help where it's framed as, can you help us adopt or be team topologies aligned in like 3 months? And that kind of question by itself already shows a little bit a view of the world that is kind of too deterministic, as if it's something that we just apply the ideas and provide the team types, align the teams to the types, and that we're good to go, and we have a good a new operating model, and that's it. Where I do believe the team topology is really about kind of ongoing change and adapting and figuring out basically what's next, what's the next challenge. And yes, having the data, like in your case, is going to be critical to see, okay, have we actually made progress? And that's totally normal. I would say that maybe we introduce some changes, I don't know, maybe some new kind of platform, and it turns out it didn't really move the needle as much as we thought it would do. And that's to be expected, because things are not as deterministic as we would like to think they are.
I think it's also a little bit about what the context is for team topologies. What I've realized is it's a little bit like you can see team topologies as a kind of exercise and diet plan for an organization. So the organization wants to run a marathon every week. Well, here's your exercise and diet plan. And if you're already really fit, if you've got the cultural foundations, if you've got the empowerment foundations, then team topologies can actually help, because you'll be able to adopt the technology, the terminology, the interaction modes, the evolution patterns, all of that stuff. You'll be able to adopt it and use it to be able to do the equivalent of run a marathon every week. If you're an organization that effectively is overweight and sitting on the couch and so on, then no amount of diet plan and like exercise plan is going to help, because there's a whole lot of foundational things you need to do first. And I think that's a perspective which will, being sensitive, we'll probably use that as a way to kind of try and set some context for organizations to help them with the preparation that makes team topologies a useful approach.
I think that what Manuel said is good, in that it's organizations are constantly evolving, whether you want them to or not. So it's just whether or not you're influencing that evolution. There's information in your book about the Conway's law and inverse Conway maneuver. That's about influencing the evolution. For us, I think having that terminology that we can all agree on as an enterprise architect, that's an astonishingly large part of my job, is making sure everyone means the same thing when they say a word. So giving us that ability to have productive conversations, because we're all talking about the same thing, allows us to evolve appropriately over time. And the other thing I want to add to that is that we very quickly discovered that we can't do this unless we understand our organization. And that means our process ended up being, hey, let's make sure we understand the business capabilities we're delivering. Let's make sure we understand the application landscape, the IT component ownership. That was a lot of analysis, and it was just so beneficial to the company in so many areas we didn't even expect it to be. So
yeah,
Steve
did a tremendous amount of work in getting that alignment around the terminology. In fact, we not just trained our leadership on what an enterprise capability is or what a streamlined team is, but we shared and socialized and had conversations all the way down to the team level. So early on, that was a very important starting point for us to align on that terminology.
That seems to me a really important point. It's not just a change that is imposed on the organization from the top. You're working with people throughout and across the organization to get them not just bought in. It's not like you must get bought into this. It's like, we're trying to empower you, and here's some terminology which is actually going to help us have better conversations. And that to me, it feels like such an important aspect of, any organizational change, but specifically in this context with team topologies.
Absolutely. Earlier, you had mentioned the slight shift to technology and business, right? Not just teams. And so those professionals that were part in identifying and defining what our enterprise capabilities were came from the business, right? And so we had to we integrated with the business early on to drive from the top, while we also were working from the bottom up.
Yeah, that was huge. That forced everyone to start thinking about priorities of what we produce, and then you're justifying your work by saying this is delivering the value that as a company we want to deliver, and that's really a huge part of being a successful company, in my opinion.
Yes, and I think that's one of the things I think which we've been surprised by, Manuel and I, in the last 5 or 6 years. The number of organizations that don't really understand the value that they're providing. And so Team Topologies provides that sort of nudge, or that invitation to look at the value, look inside the organization, get to understand the organization better, and be more honest, if you like, about what the value delivery, or what the value is that we're delivering, and have the option then to say, well, actually, that thing over there is not that valuable. Should we be doing it? But sometimes it's hard, right? Because people have been working on that thing for a long time, but at least it allows us to have a better conversation about value and about where we should be focusing our time and things.
Absolutely.
Did you have...
I was just going to say, it goes back also to the evolution, right? We're constantly changing, and we're constantly changing also dependent on what it is we're investing in any given year, whether it's a new platform or we're continuing to work on enhancing our current platform. So looking back, making sure that we're still aligned on that terminology and that value delivery aids in that next evolution.
I know the third part of the Team Topologies book, part 3, would provide you with the principles and patterns and terminology things to help with that evolution, because it's all about the team interaction modes. It's literally like part 3 is all about, I think it's even called evolution, isn't it, Manuel? Yeah. Part 3: evolving team interactions for innovation and rapid delivery. That's literally all of part 3 in the book. So that's exactly why we put it in there. Just before we wrap up on this, I think, Steve, you had a couple of concepts, maybe, or a few concepts or terminology that you continue to use now from those early sessions. I just thought it'd be interesting to see what those are, if you're happy to share some of those with people.
Well, it's the terminology that we got from the book, and I still do use that. It's a good way of having discussions with executives around, because you're constantly, especially in the age of AI, we're bringing on new teams. Well, what kind of team is this? How do we ensure that it actually is that team, that it's not just a label we slapped on it? So we can talk about the interaction modes you just mentioned, and talk about, we've got this team that does this thing now, and it's sort of enabling, and it's sort of platform, and it's sort of value stream. So it's probably going to fail if we don't make an explicit decision about what type of team that is, and then cut their cognitive load down by letting them only engage in those activities.
We have a really interesting question from Edith for Stephen.
Yeah. Big chat.
So on the topic of aligning on terminology, a big challenge I've experienced is getting leaders to understand how to translate value to the context of their business. Any hints?
So this is some of the...
this is $1 million question, right? This is a really tricky one.
For us, and Nicole and I have actually worked on adjacent spaces around this since Team Topologies, around this answer, which is getting business executives to first say what value they're in charge of. So they own a domain. What is the value that they're producing for our company, so that our company continues to stay in business and pay its employees? And then once they have that, that's when you start to say, okay, well, what applications support that value? What teams support those applications? Are those teams grouped together? Are they across domains? And that's where we start to have conversations. Well, we can produce the exact same value with the exact same people 30% faster if we just group these teams back together.
Yeah. And it sort of starts to highlight areas where someone's in charge of something which isn't really independently valuable, where there's so much coupling and dependencies, and we say, well, what would it take to... Is there a way for this person to look after an area which is independently viable, effectively, or shift some of the capabilities somewhere else so that something else is more viable? And those kind of conversations then start to emerge, which I found super interesting over the last few years. Like the way those conversations emerge effectively out of some relatively simple questions or prompts coming from things like Team Topologies.
Well, the value question is a great question, because it does also help people get away from, as you spoke to earlier, I've worked on this a long time, it's sort of dear to me, but it's not providing value. You don't want to come to someone and say, you're not providing value. You want to come to them and say, exactly, here's how you could provide more value. We're going to shift your focus. And that's what this book helped us with. Okay. Nicole, am I speaking truth?
No, I 100% agree. I think that the other link is, how are you measuring that value, right? What's driving? We've recently implemented OKRs, objective key results, right? So we have that full circle in terms of structure at the team level, and what is it that they're focused on, and how are we measuring that to then drive those conversations with higher up executives.
I think it'll be really interesting at some point to revisit what you've been doing and to see if there's some additional aspects of some of the Team Topologies, like success examples in the second edition, where you might come back and add some extra things in there and revisit it later. I'm looking forward to exploring that either later this year or early next year. That'd be great if you're up for it. I think it'd be really cool.
Fantastic.
Super. All right. Thank you both very much indeed. And thank you to Scott as well, your colleague, for contributing his time and wisdom and expertise and things to the case study as well. So if you want to know more, the EBSCO case study, teamtopologies.com/EBSCO, you'll find the details in there. Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Nicole. Great to see you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for
Sure.
joining. Okay. So, oops. Just as we wrap up, we're going to take a few questions in a minute or two. But just before we do, just a reminder, a word from the sponsor, Conflux. So don't expect to navigate these transformations alone. Find a partner that is switched on and that can help you in the right way. Very happy to have a conversation with you at Conflux. I will be involved in that. As I mentioned before, this is my consultancy. We do also have a thriving partner ecosystem. There are other partners available too. It's not just Conflux. Other partners available as well in different parts of the world. We've got partners in pretty much all the different regions now. So please take a look. As I mentioned, Conflux was involved in the early work around EBSCO, the people that we've just been speaking to, and also Telenet. Those are the two of the case studies in the second edition of Team Topologies that we were actively involved with at the early stage. If you'd like to talk about sponsorship opportunities, please do. Please get in touch. teamtopologies.com/contact will get you to our inbox, and we can have a discussion about how you can reach our extremely engaged community. We mentioned before these leadership cohorts. We'd love to see you on one of those cohorts coming soon. Hopefully later this year. If not, it's going to be early 2026. But over the next few months, we'll start to get more information out about that and hopefully get that launched. Perhaps you're interested in the success toolkit. If you're trying to roll out Team Topologies at scale, the success toolkit could be really part of that approach. And perhaps you've got an event and you want to buy a whole load of books, 50 Team Topologies second edition books or more, then head to teamtopologies.com/book and you'll be able to do exactly that. Let's take some questions, Manuel. I think we've got a little bit of time for that.
Yes.
There's some nice ones in here. Let's have a look. I'll just take this one quickly first. Johan Tegler is saying, have you compared Team Topologies with enterprise knowledge graphs, blah, blah, blah. Do you think Team Topologies can be seen as human EKG? I don't know anything about enterprise knowledge graphs, I'll be totally honest. And it's entirely possible that that there's an overlap there. Could be. It'd be interesting to explore that further in comments and online and things. But that word semantics is important in here. Team Topologies, it pairs very well with things like domain-driven design and Wardley mapping and things because we're really focused on the meaning. You'll have heard Stephen Whitaker from EBSCO talking about 20 minutes ago about saying one of the challenges he's got, one of the main things he has to do is, as an enterprise architect, is to make sure people mean the same thing when they use the same word. And there's an awful lot of importance that we place on that. It's about the meaning of things and making sure we're dealing with concepts in the right part of the organization and they're not getting blurred. They're not getting coupled. Which many organizations don't have any attention to. And part of the reason why EBSCO has been successful is because they paid attention to that important aspect. So I'm not sure TT is the same as enterprise knowledge graphs, but the focus on the meaning of concepts makes me think it's an interesting conversation to have. I don't know about you, Manuel, whether you've seen anything about this or know anything more about it, but it wouldn't surprise me.
I don't either, but yeah, what you said, I'll align with that. If TT can be seen as a way to understand how teams are connected and how the work they do is connected, then I would say probably makes sense. I would like to
comment here from Fabio.
Oh,
thank
yeah,
you.
go ahead.
Fabio is saying it's great with the practical use cases. The terminology or shared vocabulary is one of the greatest benefits I saw earlier on. Thanks for that. That's great. And we hear that all the time, that the shared vocabulary really, really helps. You pick one now.
Well, another question from Johan that I found really interesting. Wouldn't young people benefit to know about the subjects in your book before entering the workplace? And do we have examples of schools and universities that teach team topologies? So, starting with the second question, um, I know of a few examples. I've given, for example, some guest lectures at the Masters of Software Engineering for Carnegie Mellon University, which is my university where I did my second master's. And but I find, I think, aligned with your question, that it's actually missing in most curriculum, and it maybe not fit for the how do you call that, the initial um, graduation of a software engineer, maybe, but someone who's doing a post grad or something like that, I would expect that they should be looking at these issues of how we organize, how does that impact the actual systems that we're able to build, and so on. And I would say even more today with artificial intelligence, that if we have better tools and it's going to be easier supposedly to build the systems that we and the services, then we need people to even have a better understanding of value streams, of how stewardship of services and all these things we talked about at an early age. It's not like, okay, let's spend 10 years doing software engineering and kind of learning the craft and then focus on the more human and value aspects of the work, right? You need to, I agree with you, almost from the get-go, when you enter the workforce, you should be having a lot of this concepts in mind, from my biased perspective.
So we know of there's 2 universities in Norway which are using the Teams Project idea as a part of their undergraduate curriculum. I think there's a university in the US. I've given guest lectures at 2 universities in the UK. That's University College London, UCL, and Imperial College. So the more forward-thinking universities are starting to bring these ideas into the curriculum. But I guess it's early days. That could be something that we end up helping to drive in the next few years. Some sort of partnerships around curriculum and things like that. So if there are any university people in universities, particularly if you're doing curriculum development, please get in touch, because that could be an interesting partnership for us. We have done some collaboration in that space already, but it's there's a chunky effort to pull that together. But we'd love to have a conversation. Just a comment here from Edith. Thank you. The change to groupings is really helpful. The platform team concept was probably the most confusing for my colleagues and our federal sponsors. It's a great distinction. Thanks, Edith. Yes, apologies to everyone. That's the big sort of mistake or error really in the book was to talk about a platform team. But hopefully now with the second edition, where we're talking about groupings, it'll clarify things a lot. There's one more comment here. I just want to. Oh, you're going to do that one first. Do that one first. Yeah.
Yeah, I like this question from Eric. Do you see contradictions between team topologies and DORA metrics plus capabilities, or they complement well each other? So if people are not familiar with DORA metrics, it's coming essentially from the book Accelerate that has been, I think, been mentioned before, or maybe it was in a previous session. The 2 books, Team Topologies and Accelerate, work very well together within the context of software engineering. So the DORA metrics are very helpful to give us a sense of, how are we doing in terms of, our speed of delivery, but also our ability to provide, reliable services and services with the right level of quality. So that's all helpful. And I think that aligns well with kind of the ideas of stewardship and orientation to value streams as well, to some extent. I do find that sometimes DORA metrics can be misleading if they're not interpreted in kind of in a good way. So what I mean by that is that I've seen cases where you look at the team level and the DORA metrics are fantastic, but because the teams are actually not aligned to value streams, you still have like kind of more component teams. It's great if you can deliver multiple times a day on your component, but does this bring any value to the end customer? Not exactly. That still takes multiple weeks or months because we need all these changes from the different teams to be in place. So I liked, and I mentioned this in the trainings I gave, I think if you look at DORA metrics from a service point of view, where the service or stream adds value to the customer, yes, totally useful. If you're looking at that from the team level, it's kind of a slippery slope where you might be looking and feeling confident about things because you have these metrics looking good, but actually you're not actually necessarily delivering value to the end customer.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. So with my consulting hat on, I'll put my consulting hat on now. At Conflux, we've been doing a lot of work recently in private sector and public sector using the DORA metrics. I put the link in the comments. Using the DORA metrics, but using them in a more nuanced way, a bit more careful way, because the DORA metrics are really not input metrics, they're output metrics. Like if we improve the underlying capabilities, we'd expect to see the DORA metrics change. But too many organizations try to drive the DORA metrics directly, shrinking lead time, increasing deployment frequency, sort of a leader coming and going, you must deploy many more times a day without the underlying capabilities. Going back to the kind of marathon running metaphor, that would be telling someone they have to run a marathon every day before they've built the core strength and the ankle strength to be able to do that. The organization is going to fail. You're going to fall over at some point. It's driving the wrong thing. So we're doing a lot of work in that space, and there's some interesting stuff coming. I think probably 2026 around like an approach that incorporates the DORA metrics but kind of treats them in a different way. There's nothing public yet, but we're working on that.
A last comment on that. So there are other frameworks. Actually, I think from the DORA people point of view, they also realize that there's now the space framework, which is kind of extends in a way DORA. But I also wanted to mention, following what Matthew said, as the DORA metrics being kind of an output or effectively kind of a lagging indicator, right? You're going to see that results at the end of your cycle. And if you think back at team cognitive load, and because I've been working with multiple customers and leads for the product temperature that we mentioned, the question often comes as, does temperature and team cognitive load assessment give me some kind of productivity metrics like DORA metrics? And it's important to understand, there's a big difference there, where if we're looking at the team cognitive load, it's more a predictor of what the team is going to be able to do. If they're overloaded, if there are too many things on their plate, or there are some other factors driving cognitive load up, then it's going to be much harder to achieve the kind of elite DORA metrics results that you see in the reports they do, right? So it's kind of more of a leading indicator that if cognitive load is not healthy, is not sustainable, then you're probably, even if today your DORA metrics might be fantastic, but you've overloaded the team for some reason, then maybe you just gave them too many responsibilities, then probably in 2-3 months you're going to see DORA metrics go down. But then you're already at the end of the cycle. In a way, you're looking at the lagging indicators versus we could have done something earlier if we knew that cognitive load was a problem.
Lots more really great questions. Thank you everyone for sharing those questions and comments in the chat. Really appreciated. Thank you to our guests. It remains just to say really thank you, and let's take humane, effective organizations to the next level with Team Topologies, particularly the case studies and so on in the second edition. We can do this. We can get there. It's already happening worldwide. And thank you for all of your attention and interest and enthusiasm around this space. And we look forward to more of it over the next few years. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, everyone.